Welcome to All Right in Sin City, a podcast about writers and writing in the Windsor-Detroit region. Your podcasters today are
Irene Moore Davis, author, educator, and local historian.
Sarah Jarvis, former bookseller, publishing rep, and literary festival chair.
and me, Kim Conklin, Windsor-based writer and filmmaker. On today's podcast, we'll visit the By the River reading series hosted by Urban Farmhouse Press. This event took place at historic Mackenzie Hall here in Windsor, and it features readings by 3 poets: Samantha Badaoa, Windsor's Youth Poet Laureate; Sandra Ridley, an award-winning writer of 4 books of poetry; and we'll hear from Peter Hrastovec, Windsor author of 2 books of poetry published by Black Moss Press. This event was emceed by poet and publisher Daniel Lockhart. Now, here's Daniel.
Kulamausi, Ani, Bojo, welcome to the traditional territories of the Three Fires Confederacy for our first reading of this new decade for By the River. It's a real pleasure that you get to see you guys come out tonight, and a real pleasure to present the writers that are going to present to you tonight. For some of you who don't know, tonight we have our Youth Poet Laureate, Samantha Badaoa. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Hey, I got that one right. Applaud me because I got that right. Who will be sharing work from her new book, which is coming out in just a couple of months with Black Moss Press. We also have the great, and you guys should all know him if you're from Windsor, is Peter Hrastovec, who is another Black Moss Press poet. I'll give you a bit more sort of formal introductions as they come up. We're going to do things a little differently too. We'll get to that in a second. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have one of our furthest visitors, person that's come the furthest to read here by the river, is Sandra Ridley, the amazing poet Sandra Ridley, from Ottawa via Saskatchewan, via Koreatown, via... Good enough? We got enough vias in there?
Perfect.
And she didn't take via, that's why she's here on time. Sorry, I still love via. I love via. I even found the old poster for you guys. Those who don't know, Urban Farmhouse Press is my press. I want to say I own it. It's always fun to say you own something. But this is our press, and we're based out of Windsor. And we publish lots of little things. This is our old logo. I got rid of that sort of Rencent thing, and I put I used to call them the Stripper Palace downtown, but it was the biggest towers downtown. So you'll see a different poster if you look us up online, but this makes it look more official. So, but I want to thank you all for coming out tonight, and we're going to do a very special thing, and I love to hear voices in conversation. So we've discussed it with the poets, and we're going to do a round robin. So you don't have to sit there and eagerly await the next poet. They're going to read about 4 poems each, and then they're going to hand it off. It's a fun system to do. We've done it as I've sort of traveled everywhere. So you don't want to hear me speak. If you want to hear me speak, you could have come out last time around. So let's stop me talking here, and let's bring up the first poet. So first poet tonight is going to be Samantha Badaoa. This is not her first time reading for By the River. For those who aren't familiar with the reading series, we started a couple years ago by my lovely wife, Emily Lockhart. And we originally worked with the Windsor Public Library, and Samantha was working with the Windsor Poetry Slam, and had the Poetry Slam team come out. So this is a real neat transition for me to witness as the community sort of grows and we develop the next generation of poets. And Samantha is leading that charge. This is her first published book, so she's moving from the spoken performative word onto the page. So this is going to be really cool to see this, and it gives you a great sort of sample as to what's coming in the spring. And this is Samantha Badaoa. So let's just bring her up. Let's give her a big round of applause. And for those who don't know, we're actually having this recorded tonight for a podcast. So no loud swearing in the background, unless it's about coney dogs, and I'm okay with that then.
Can you swear in your poems?
I hope so. Otherwise, they're not poems. Please swear as much as you can in your poems. Okay. Sam, take it away.
Hello, everyone. I'm Samantha, and I'm super excited to be here. I always get a little nervous, but thank you for that introduction, Daniel. I am primarily a spoken word artist. I run a not-for-profit, the Windsor Poetry Slam. We have slams, and we compete, and we have a lot of fun. And as you said, I have a book coming out in April with Black Moss Press. super weird to go from like performing on a dingy stage in a dive bar that I love. I love Windsor's dive bar. You should check them out while you're here. to saying, oh my God, I wrote a book. Super weird, super excited. And yeah, we're gonna have a good night. So, yay. Okay.
And I'll give you the sign.
Yeah, tell me to wrap it up. So, I am Middle Eastern. My parents were both born in Lebanon. My dad moved to Canada when he was 8. My mom moved to Canada when she was 23 to get married and have babies, as they did back then. And so my natural hair is not this. This is like the right crowd for it, because sometimes I'll throw out this reference and I get blank stares and it breaks my heart. But Diana Ross,
Yeah.
woo, that's my hair, naturally. Real big, real curly, and I used to pretend I was like a member of the Supremes. So Motown is in my heart, and so that's usually what my hair looks like. I grew up in Leamington, and it's kind of a mixed bunch of Arabic people, Portuguese people, Italian people, but the schools I went to were primarily Italian people, so needless to say, I didn't grow up with people who looked like me, so I kind of always had a complex relationship with my hair and being Arabic and growing up around white people. And also, I don't think I have to tell any of the women here, women, I think, inherently have a weird relationship with their hair and kind of are conditioned to feel a way about it and to feel like it's probably more important than it actually is. So growing up kind of with all these things intersecting, it was interesting. So I wrote a poem about my hair. It's called Maine, and here it is. My hair has made a graveyard of the things that have tried to control it. It consumes all that attempts to tame it. I let it roam free without judgment or expectation until Rebecca asks me why my hair looks like a poodle. I spend the rest of 6th grade being called Poodle. I spend the rest of the year studying magazine covers, trying to understand how to look like her, how to look like the sea of bodies constantly surrounding me. When I ask my mother why even the women in her Middle Eastern soap opera have straight hair, she tells me how easy it is to be seduced by heat and flat irons. How much people want to quiet all that is unruly about themselves, she takes out a map. Points to her hometown, tells me that I am the spitting image of all the women that prowl her mountainside village, tells me that in a way, I am all that she hasn't seen in a decade. But not all lessons are learned right away. I ask for a straightener for Christmas and I get it. I spend most of my teen years battling all that is not white about me. I have lived in the steam and smoke and empty promises of beauty products meant to fix something I didn't know was broken. I have never apologized for all the prayers I wasted, all the time I spent wishing myself different, everything I did to forget the mountains I resemble or all that I am still doing. Thank you. So, to add to this complex growing up history, I was also raised Catholic. And that brings up a whole, I won't even say can of worms, a pool of worms, a freaking pool of worms, because you said that we should swear. So, yeah, the Catholic Church is complicated, and being a woman in the Catholic Church is complicated, and trying to fit into perhaps a place that is supposed to be so holy when maybe you don't see yourself represented in the most important aspects of the church. That can also be difficult. So I am Maronite Catholic, which is a special branch of Catholicism, not like Roman Catholic, and the priests can actually get married. So a fun little joke is my mom would always be like, the priest, you know he's a good guy. So that's something to ponder and think about. And I think I grew up very Catholic, very religious, and kind of a strict Orthodox family. And so from a very young age, I was put into things like Bible study, and I was an altar girl. And perhaps when you're young, you don't pick up on all of the nuances of the Catholic Church, but even from when I was very young, I could see that there weren't many women in prominent roles in the church. And so my role as an altar girl ended. And this is a poem about me kind of working through being a woman in the Catholic Church, which, yeah, could take volumes, but this is just one poem. So this one is called Robes. I see women in almost every breath of my church. I see women leading Sunday school, telling crowds of mostly little girls about things they cannot grasp yet, things like eternity, sacrifice, things better lived than learned. I see women making sure the church is kept clean, making sure the stained glass is kept glistening, replacing candles that no longer burn, making sure the grounds are kept beautiful, making sure the church is kept standing. I see the choir leader, making songs older than us, than all of us feel new, feel important, feel close. I see women painted delicately, framed ornately, hung in places with the best light. I see women in almost every breath of my church except the altar, except the place where one is closest to body, blood, and spirit. I realize that woman is a title not yet mine because the priest asks me to be an altar girl. Women are all confined to corners of the church, to roles that are easily hidden or disvalued. I realize that the robe I'm meant to wear doesn't fit me quite right. It bunches in the front, in places that are just beginning to swell and grow. I realize the altar boys don't have to worry about this. It is like the garment was made for them. So that's, yeah. One more? Okay. And those garments are made for them. They do not accommodate curves. I don't know how it was in everyone's church, but basically in my church it was like a big, like rectangle sack, and then you tied a piece of rope, literally a piece of rope around your waist, and it was shapeless, and it was very, very heavy, and it made a lot of noise. So there's that. Okay, so one more. Should I end on a happy note, or do you guys want to hear one about colonialism?
Colonialism.
Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, so setup. I am Arabic, like I said. Lebanon has a very complex and long history with French colonialism. I am by no means an expert. Please don't ask me complex questions. But basically, when I was growing up, I would see all of these French influences, but I wouldn't process them in a way that was as concrete and that made sense to me as colonialism. That's not even a word I heard until, honestly, the middle of high school. Like, it just wasn't something that was talked about. So this is me reflecting on a moment when I was young and kind of putting the pieces together. So. I'm hunched over the kitchen table, brow furrowed, pencil gripped tightly in my hand, trying to get through my French homework. French is a class I only have to take once in high school, a fact I keep reminding myself of as I flip through the worn pages of my English to French dictionary when she comes by and offers to help. Mom knows French. Mom knows French well. Mom took her Canadian citizenship test in French. Her driver's license is in French. All of her official documents are in French. She tells me that in Lebanon, most people learn French before Arabic. Tells me casually that French is her first language. It is my first time learning about colonialism. Although I will not hear the word for another year, she conjugates French verbs while kneading dough the way her mama taught her. Connaître, to know. To know that the colonizer's tongue has rewritten stories and called it translation while the school board calls it mandatory. Entendre, to hear. To hear your voice speak words it was forced to learn and not resent it. Être, to be. To be able to move countries and still be haunted by the memory of a language that proves to be useful to you. Dad tells me to keep taking French. Says something about jobs, about it being a good opportunity, says it will open a lot of doors. I tell him that's what I'm afraid of. That was that one.
You're good now. Okay. She's been freed from the podium. It's a little different, but I like to sort of get the melange of voices. So wonderful. And I'm actually reading the book for the publisher, and you have to read this book if you're from the area. It's such a great voice, and as someone who worked in Leamington growing up, and my father was a high school teacher there, it's that missing sort of part of our Sowesto dialogue down here. So thank you, and we're going to hear more from Samantha, but just not right away. So up next, we're going to bring up Sandra Ridley. For those of you who don't know Sandra, she is visiting us from Ottawa. She's the author of 4 books of poetry. We have 3 of them back. No, we have all 4 back there. Followed what? 3. We only have 3. We only have 3 back there. Sorry. So you can only buy 3 books. She'll ship you one of the old ones later, right? Followed Post-Apothecary, the Counting House, and Silvija, which was a finalist for the 2017 Griffin Poetry Prize. She is Sandra's an instructor at the Sage Hill Writing Experience in Saskatchewan, which is where you originally hail from. And she's mentored poets through Ottawa's supportive housing and mental health services Footprints to Recovery program for people living with mental illness. I want to thank Sandra so much for coming up. And give her a big round of applause.
Thanks. I kind of feel like I'm coming to Windsor. It's interesting for me.
Very tense.
So you're going to cut me off if I go too long. I tend to work I do work in sequential forms, so I don't have one-off poems that I can just pick and choose. So I'm just going to go and jump in, because that's what I do. But first, thank you very much for being here and for having me. Swallow the word, swallow the tongue, swallow down the fullness in the throat. Our dead call out our dead. You show your filthy face, you useless tit, you runt, you piece of shit, a shame unleashed by plain talk. Begging before threshing from the old butcher, your leather strap unbelted, crescent buckle for a skinning, hiding, each of us slickened with blood, held down in your hinterland, each barren mile unabating, save mercy. What dwells in the dog's sleep, unbounded, darkness? The closer you are to the sun, the more difficult you are to see, penumbral, who runs from whom, until kept down, cowering, I do not move, you will not move. You are no less dangerous than you were as you drag your bones, field stones. We never once wept upon the firmament. 8 children left with a lone wife who would not carry the quiet, the final cardiac pall, paled 30 years, crescent moons, scars strapped below the heart. A finisher with a surly disposition, better run, boy, run, before the shadow on an August day, flight of the dove interrupted. Who should feel shame? Worthless idlers, caught neurotic. We are taught, you will not be tamed. Each child dragged by its hair across the linoleum, given lip, good for nothing, illicit, dust, dusklit, let these bygones cease holding on to me. We brace in the center, attention, nothing more than this far-fetched ruckus, rot gut fuss, a latched door farmhouse, taunting, the slapboard remains, rants, lashed feverish, your day's demands, fraught, cling to the bleak, this filth in plain sight, I am a man possessed. Beyond 2 graves, yours and the child's, a sole pine fallen from a lack of forest, the sundown dove wing unfolds under night, your closeness lies too close. Birch box and iron nails, buried under the cover of lichen, scrolled years, each letter etched by lime, faded shame, be a lesser phantom of the bleak, you will receive no less, no blossom braided in the child's hair. Rosemary, rose of thorn, rose up from prairie. Wherever you have gone, you will not take her, unfollowed to a harrow, kin, stone, infanta, sub rosa, only her eyes cry. Our dire wolf, bewildered, breath taken in plain sight, before the sun is far at the south, rucksacked, a shadow across the face, red zenith, dog light, dead dog creek. In the faithful hour, his small body filled with buckshot, carry him, carry him. Undreamt, the sleeper remains untouched. I've been meaning to say, I bellyache, useless tit, found the rain barrel with her long-drowned dove. After the diminishing, dirt body kicked against kitchen wall, kept alive, what mercy has lessened, quietened as we speak of light, spoiled, crybaby, a bunkum transubstantiated, our cunning remains within. Any radiant scene is due to perspective. At the first ascension, night cold will come as reprieve, as rescue. We sad animals, all of us wet behind the ears, we still drag our own wet skins. Even death is a quiet, even the fiercest sleep. After another day, an hour bent to water, a catch song shudders from the diviner, a bough cut for the wellspring. Holder of the dog's bones, night-fallen creek, current home, borne back, broken, the limp body still writhing, we will never depend upon our eyes. Submerged, without air, within water, us small-sacked in the last hour, the equinox relinquished, moonward, out of my sight. A wife's tale, we find you not as we want you, still where you are, dead on the floor, facing down the long shadow, incalculable. We await the whimper, eyes lowering, descent to the casket, no axis spinning, stars dying, no, they're already gone. Eclipse the eye of the dark, open the mouth, breathe you in, hold the breath. Should I stop?
Get 2 moments. If it's a good stopping point.
Sleep is for the weak. I collected the reasons against it which were in everybody's mouth. I marked them down with, I think, some additions you may or may not remember. I feign now pleasure, sleep in splendor, notwithstanding the sadness of the subject. Please read the letter. A fool could read the signs. The point then settled. I can't keep it in, can't do it anymore. What then, you will say? I can't, perhaps I can't be alone. I can't be with you, can't stop. And for my own part, I have no fear of it. I can't explain. Others perhaps might, and yet I can't forget, especially when there's nothing to be lost by it. I assure you, I can't help myself. I can't breathe.
Feels just like I feel like it matches the mood. Your reading just matches the mood of sort of the city right now. I don't know what it is. It feels perfect. Which is dark, right? Maybe it's just me because it's January and I'm in the dog days of winter or something. I don't know. I'm cool with it being on. Huh?
I'm home.
Yeah. So this, like I said, this is round 1. So round 2, we're going to end off with a great showman from the city of Windsor, a man who I've been working with a lot in the past. We had the pleasure of both being on Black Moss together with Dorothy and Marianne back there as well. We worked on a wonderful collection of poems to the history of the city of Windsor. And it's one of those real pleasures when I got to move back to Windsor from Indianapolis and meet such a great group of poets. And Peter Hrastovec is definitely at the center of that group. He's become this sort of great performative voice and has read with us many times at By the River. And it's always a treat. And it's always a treat to introduce Peter. He's the author of multiple books, including Sidelines and In Lieu of Flowers, which are both available back there. You should read them if you haven't, and if you haven't heard them, you should. Hopefully Peter will share some tonight. They're fantastic poems. Peter's got some new stuff as well. So without further ado, let's bring up the great Peter Hrastovec.
The great Peter Hrastovec, like I'm going to do some magic tricks or something like that. Thank you very much for that very warm introduction, Daniel. It's always a pleasure to work with you and lovely Emily and Urban Farmhouse Press, of course. And I was hoping to be, at the very least, the middle poet, because I wanted to be the thorn between two roses. But I'm struggling and climbing up the fence. But it was wonderful to hear from Sam and from Sandra, a new poet, a new friend. I always found that you can't be friends with someone unless you break bread with them. That's always been my rule. And you can't be friends with a poet unless you read with them together. So now we're poetic friends, and it's always a pleasure. I'm going to start off with 3 poems in this round robin that we're doing. And there are actually 3 new poems. Actually 3 new poems. And in my forthcoming book, hopefully later this year, Working title is There Will Be Fish. And a lot of the poems emanate from my family's native Croatia. I'm Canadian of Croatian descent, born here. My folks came after the war, and I've been back to Croatia a number of times to connect with relatives. And we were on a wonderful cruise last year of the Croatian islands with my lovely wife Denise, who's sitting here. We had a great trip last summer. And one of the islands we visited was the island of Hrastovec. And Hrastovec is known for these amazing chimneys they have. But it's a rather barren island in that there's very few people who live there, and a lot of nice homes, but nobody's home. The houses are there, but it's very, very quiet. So I ended up breaking away from the group, taking photographs, and essentially was briefly lost in Hrastovec, and that's the title of the poem. Heat and curiosity found me wandering, spellbound in a strange town where chimneys masquerade as minarets, elf-like emanations protruding from tiled roofs to punch the sky. Narrow roads made for roadkill, cars come and go quickly and disappear a la film noir, leaving you edgy and clinging to vine-studded ancient walls. When it's safe, you step out to read sporadic plaques describing intermittent churches, chapels, and dead politicians. For sale signs are an invitation to explore empty houses owned by missing persons in a site inspired by science fiction. You can't help but wonder how on earth someone would promote this island, an idyllic getaway for tourists whose every click of a camera shutter scatters the predatory birds along with their secrets. Thank you. The second poem I'm going to read in this session is in honor of Martin Luther King. Monday was MLK Day. And I had the opportunity a couple years back to visit Memphis. And I visited Lorraine Hotel. And it was a motel, and it was very moving. Because I was 11 years old when the great Dr. King was assassinated, and just standing there, it's just unbelievable. So I'll let the poem speak for itself. Visiting the Lorraine Motel. I stood where the clock was broken, below the lurid Memphis moon, where a window is cracked open, just enough to change the journey, just enough to silence history. I stand where the sermon ended, above the screams of disbelief, where bleeding day becomes blood-soaked night, just enough to color thinking, just enough to darken hearts. I'm standing where the preacher stood, in the shadow of the massive mountain, where once he voiced a solemn promise, just enough for us to hear, just enough to overcome. I see where they stood. Grainy TV people pointing at a window left wide open, just enough to see let slip just enough of the dream in progress. The last poem I'm going to read at this point is a new poem about one of my idols. I'm a real idol worshiper. I've got lots of heroes. And I'm a big baseball fan, and we're less than a month away from catchers and pitchers reporting, which always excites me because to me that's the sign of spring. Not March, but the middle of February, when catchers and pitchers report. So this is about the first baseball game I ever saw. And it's about my hero, still my hero, Willie Horton. And it's called I Once Saw Willie Horton. I once saw Willie Horton hit a grand slam. On a warm Saturday afternoon, the air heavy with the smell of hot dogs and spilled beer. I kept Willie Horton in my hip pocket, his face, his arms, his bat, a dog-eared and tattered baseball card worth 1 Harmon Killebrew, a Frank Howard, and 2 pop bottles, and crammed him into a pair of old blue jeans torn at the knees from trying to slide into second base, just like he did. I knew Willie Horton was bigger than life, though he stood that afternoon like he was tiny, almost miniature, in the shadows of the grandstand, over 400 feet away from me and my crew, across a jade sea of grass. I could see Willie Horton from the bleachers, the cheap seats, where we sat, sunbaked and anxious, so very, very far away. You would think we were in a distant country. I saw Willie Horton in the on-deck circle, beside home plate, swinging at phantom pitches, waiting his turn to declare the strike zone as his own. I knew it was Willie Horton by the way he handled his bat, by the way he waited his turn, because he played for the love of the game, played to love and be loved, played because his love of baseball was a thing we shared, all who watched from every seat or all who heard on every radio on a June afternoon that was made for myth and magic. I saw Willie Horton take his place at the plate with the bases loaded, a smile for the catcher, a nod to the umpire, and plain old grit for the pitcher. I saw Willie Horton beam when the crowd began to chant, "Hit the ball, Willie! Hit the ball, Willie! Hit the ball!" I saw Willie Horton's bat connect with the first pitch, sending the ball screaming, ascending rocket-like into the heavens, taking its place amidst the constellations, practically defying physics, and then descending like a space capsule, hurtling through the atmosphere, a vicious flame streak that tore through the clouds like a storm in summer, a perfect arc that would have been the envy of the ancient mathematicians, the ball crashing into the bleachers, a defiant knock on wooden seats, a hard door slammed, a hammer hitting lumber, bouncing firm and bounding high, and dropping with precision into the hands of the luckiest person I had ever seen, a wide-eyed random kid who could hardly wipe the smile from his face, stuck there most likely for the rest of the day and maybe into the next or forever. And I thought, it doesn't get any better than this. It did, of course. The it got better with my own kids on summer afternoons and adventures that remained to be written. But it all had to start somewhere. In a summer where I saw Willie Horton run home, almost 2 years to the day, when he stood on a car while his city burned and declared to those who dared to rebel to go home, just like he did. Running home in the kingdom at Michigan and Trumbull, where the bleachers in June was the very place where rainbows begin and never find their end. Thank you. Love the hat. Tiger hat, right?
Thanks for joining us. Look for more episodes of All Right in Sin City wherever you listen to podcasts, or check out our website, allrightinsincity.com. For information and announcements of new podcasts, sign up to our email list or follow us on Facebook and Twitter.